Well, first off, you mentioned the Phantom of the Opera thing, and I know exactly the production you're talking about. But you mentioned that as like the first thing that rang your bell, and that phrase that you used rang something in me, which is that my experience of the first thing that rang my bell and made me aware of different things and desires was a scene when I was I was watching. I was like 9 years old, and I was watching Men in Black 2. There's a scene where the villain, who's just a woman filled with tentacles, she goes up stage. I know. Hello everybody, I'm Pax and this is Brotakus, the show where we do a deep dive on what is and isn't worth watching. We believe you don't need a major in anime studies to enjoy this wild, beautiful, strange art form, and we are so lucky to have you on this journey with us. Hal is out this week trying to gather the 7 dragon orbs that have been scattered throughout the earth so he could bring Goku back from the dead. Check his Twitter for updates. It is getting pretty rough out there in the 6. Our guest today, we are so excited to have her on, Anne Ishii. Anne Ishii is a Philadelphia-based writer, translator, and producer, but that does not even begin to cover all that she's done. She co-founded Massive Goods with Graham Kolbeins. Am I saying that correct? Yeah. Kolbeins? Yeah. Such a cool last name. It's like Cool Beans. But yeah, as well as working with him as a co-producer on the groundbreaking documentary Queer Japan, which is so good. Please watch Queer Japan. She currently serves as the executive director of the Asian Arts Initiative in Philadelphia. You can find her on AnneIshii.com, on Twitter at @ill_iterate. Great handle. Such a good handle. And Anne, did I see that you have a Substack as well?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Are we keeping that on the DL?
No. People can go there. I just edited it down because it felt a lot.
Gotcha.
But no, so please check it out. I review books and movies and things on it, so yeah.
Awesome. Check out Anne's newly edited down Substack, and if they just Google Anne Ishii's Substack, will they find it?
Yeah, amishii.substack.com.
Okay, nice. Well, that wasn't a very professional intro because I'm asking you questions during the intro. But Anne, thank you so much for coming on today. As for normally Brotaku's News Corner, we talk about news at the start of the show. No news this week. There is no news other than if this episode is coming out after our Demon Slayer Mugen Train review, we are not going to apologize for saying what we said. Your death threats mean nothing to us. They are sloughing off our back like rainwater. I do not care. I don't care.
Wow, courage.
Yes. And have you seen Demon Slayer at all? Is this a familiar thing to you?
You know, I was actually going to say, you should know about me that despite my very, very specific and deep knowledge of some aspects of manga and anime, the rest is completely, I mean, you could be talking about the moons of Saturn. I just...
I totally get it. The new Demon Slayer movie just broke the box office title previously held by Spirited Away, so it's making a lot of headlines. Whoa. But it doesn't function as a movie. It is not a functional script.
That makes me want to watch it.
I know, right? Yeah. Okay. So, Anne, there is so much to cover with you regarding just your story and getting into this. I had first heard of you when I was a young gender studies major who was also into the most depraved manga, as is often the origin story of a gender studies major. You discovered the pornography first. But a book that we were actually asked to read was your translation of My Brother's Husband by
Gengoroh Tagame. Yeah.
Gengoroh Tagame. Yes. And that sent me down this hole, kind of pun intended, of researching all of his work, and then in the same vein, all of your work and what you were doing, and then later your work with Massive Goods. But I think that what you have done to get from point A to point B is so fascinating that I kind of want to start with your origin story, so to say, which shocked me because you studied French for years, right? Mm-hmm. Can you describe what got you into that in that phase of your life before heading into the kind of like manga sphere in the publishing world?
Okay, so as a kid, I think like a lot of girls, and I'm using that word very deliberately, this whole notion of like what would be romantic in my life. And it was just really important to me that like my life was filled with romance. And I use that word a lot, like to a really kind of hideously embarrassing level of just like, there always needs to be romance in my life. And I was so tortured, and my favorite things were all about unrequited love. And I realized that, not to get like too deep into this, but it had to do with God. And I don't want to get into that now, but it was definitely just this like, you're supposed to be in love with something you can't see, right? So that sort of seduction was always on my mind. And that's literally been the through line my entire life, is just like a seduction. Just what can't I see? What can't I achieve? What's the pinnacle? What can't I touch? And this is all important. So, in high school, going into college, I actually wanted to be a music major. And that's what I started with. I had like a music scholarship, and I was like ready to go into that. And for a lot of reasons, just really, really sad reasons, I dropped it all. And so just one day I put everything away and I was like, I'm never doing this again. And French was the next thing that I had done that was extremely difficult and that I mastered and did so well that I was like, that's the thing that I want to do. Now, simultaneously, I am also studying Japanese, and I continue to read in Japanese. And so my degree is technically in French literature, but my dissertation, not my dissertation, what do you call it in high school? But my BA, my graduating paper, was actually a translation of a Japanese book. So the first thing I did was actually translate from Japanese to English, but it was the French language and the French culture that I wanted to be immersed in. It just felt a lot less tenable. So beginning of the Anne Ishii experience was like, what's the most romantic, most difficult, most challenging, most musical thing I can do that's not the things, the more obvious things, right?
Right.
And it was to go to France and teach English, which was the first job I was offered out of college. I hated it in France. I hated it so much.
Why? What happened? What happened in France?
I was there for like a couple years, and I had a boyfriend, and I got really involved in the local music scene. And it was like, so on the surface of it, great. I hated the food. I hated how everybody treated me for not being, not looking like them. It was very isolating, and I felt very, it's so out of place. I was just like so massively out of place. And all of the things that I thought were romantic were just indicators of like, dickish, asshole, sort of kind of name it, right? Like just very patriarchal, right? Very chauvinistic and not cool. And I realized, oh, this isn't romantic. It wasn't even sexually liberated, like, which would have made it actually really interesting.
Right.
And so at that point, I realized, oh, you know what? Like, I really need to be honest with myself. I want to be working in Japanese language. So then I applied to a master's program at Columbia in New York, showed up to New York City 2 weeks before 9/11. And for the first time in my life, had no idea what the World Trade Center was. And then it exploded in my face. That whole first year, I was covered in hives from head to toe. It was like such an awful experience. But that was romantic. I hate, not to be cute about it, but it was just sort of like, oh my God, I'm doing this. And oh my God, New York in the early aughts. I know diehard New Yorkers would be like, it was Disneyland, Giuliani, but I loved it. It was, oh my God, like that was the challenge. That was the romance. That was the music. That was the thing that I wanted. And it was also extremely lucrative. I was extremely fortunate to have graduated from grad school with a job in the publishing industry at a press that specialized in Japanese to English translations, Vertical. So
right, absolutely.
Vertical Press, now part of Kodansha, but I was their first director of marketing and publicity, and that's where I learned everything about publishing. I feel like the rest is history, because that's also when I was first introduced to gay manga, and it was just an immediate connection. And it was Tagame's work that was first introduced to me. I mean, he is the god of, gay erotica. Yeah. And because I'm insane, I wrote to him through, at the prompting of a couple friends, Graham and the book designer Chip Kidd, who were like, what's up with this work? Like, let's see it in America. Why hasn't it been translated? And we kept waiting for somebody to do it. And I was like, I'm just going to write him. And surprisingly, he had like, an email address on his contact form on some like dinky website. And at the time, for my day job, I was going to Japan at least twice a year. So on one of my trips, I was just like, hi, I'd really love to meet you and just like talk about the opportunity to translate you into English. And just instant love connection. So yeah, and everything else kind of happened after that.
That is so fascinating, and you just mentioned a few things there that I think bring up some more, I guess to use the phrase spiritual or philosophical points. I'm curious, in this era of your life, the phrase romance keeps coming up. What does romantic mean to you, I guess now to you, on that level? Like, what does that capture to you? What was that feeling that you felt like you were chasing for all those years?
Oh, it's the chase. Oh my God. You said the word chase, and that's like, I'm going to say something so embarrassing, but like the first piece of like cultural content that really just like rang my bell was not the musical Phantom of the Opera, but
oh my God, okay, go on.
But like some corny network TV adaptation of the musical into like a 2-hour, 2-day miniseries. I just was like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I might have been maybe 11 or 12 when I watched it, but to me, the romance of it was that there was this guy hiding in an opera house wearing a mask who was controlling the career of this like ingenue who had no idea how talented she was. And that was my dream. I was like, I want the Phantom of the Opera to find me and make it possible for me to be like a musical god, right? And one of my favorite quotes, actually, everything I'm saying is a little bit embarrassing, but I'm going to try to own all of it because it really is the core of like what drives my craft work. Frederick Lacan says, "Love is giving what you don't have to somebody who doesn't want it." And that kills me. So like these stories where just there's the tension and there's an untouchability and the sort of the distance keeps getting halved, but you never touch. Like all of that tension is so beautiful. And I think that's also why porn and erotica are really fascinating to me, because it's this never ending, you can never be satisfied. It's just like it's an endless font of all of the experiences. And for a person to really dedicate themselves to that work, because I think we believe that the orgasm is it, right? Or like it's like penetration and then you're done. But as we know now as queer folks, that's absolutely not the case, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what's really exciting to me is the idea that like we can reach this feeling with either too much or too little or not enough, or that I don't know how to say it. It's just that makes everything else that we do to sustain ourselves and survive all the more exciting, because everything else we do, quite frankly, is boring, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's why queer erotica, but also just producing erotica in general, can be so difficult, because oftentimes if you're only servicing a base level of just like create sexy images, make the things that make you want to come, you're just feeding into the I guess ephemeral side of this. But there is a deeper hungering sort of like sometimes hollowing desire that can just gut you out and work on a lot of deeper levels. And I think that when we have material that's at its best, it's kind of operating on those things.
Exactly it. And I think that you just said something really interesting, but it isn't it's that hollowing out, right? And that's why I'm so excited by people who can't get enough, and that's either in a specialization or in just like this like raging hunger. And I think that's also that's also romance, right? Because you keep pushing the bottom of the well,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first off, you mentioned the Phantom of the Opera thing, and I know exactly the production you're talking about. But you mentioned that as like the first thing that rang your bell, and that phrase that you used rang something in me, which is that my experience of the first thing that rang my bell and made me aware of different things and desires was a scene when I was I was watching. I was like 9 years old, and I was watching Men in Black 2. There's a scene where the villain, who's just a woman filled with tentacles, she goes up to I know. She goes up to Agent Smith, and to read his mind, like puts her tongue in his ear, and it looks like it goes in like 40 feet and turns into a fucking cobra. And that was what rang my bell. So you're allowed to have your thing, because that was mine.
Oh my god. Oh, that's so good. Oh my god.
And now here I am talking about hentai on an anime podcast.
Dude.
So self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh god.
I just want to say too, just like thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and tentacle porn has gotten a bad rap. It's kind of unfortunate because I mean, why not? And it's
why not? Oh Jesus Christ.
Haven't you seen my octopus friend? Why not? I mean, it's like, I think too, just like aggressive porn and aggressive sexuality have never scared me, right? And I used to think that I mean, I think a lot of queer people can empathize with this, just that sort of like, oh, is this, you can have a really accepting family and be surrounded by people who kind of generally encourage self-discovery, and it'll still feel a little off. But I mean, it's also just sort of owning that. And what's a little bit weird might be the person who takes that for granted. So like, I kind of enjoy the fact that it is titillating and that I can't take my eyes away from it, but also that at the same time, I'm like, I probably should back off. I probably shouldn't be talking about this, all the time.
Yeah. I totally get that. I've read you talking about making the shift into producing and translating actively as kind of a example of, standing at a crossroads and showing a type of drive and temerity. And can you kind of describe the moment that you realized, okay, wait, maybe it's not an inevitability that somebody else is going to do this and get into this field. Maybe I need to be the one.
Yeah. So something Tagame says about gay erotica that I really love is that it suffers no pretenders. You can't be into it if you don't like it. Like, you can't pretend to like gay porn if you don't like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's something, even in my current job where I work with a lot of Asian American artists are struggling with how to negotiate identity so as not to sound corny or narcissistic. It's really hard to accept, like, I'm doing this because I enjoy it. I know it sounds counterintuitive, like, of course you want to do the things you enjoy and love your job and all that, but it's a little bit different. I guess it's, I've met so many gay artists who can't not create gay content. They can't not do it, right? So that's the stuff I'm interested in, is what's the thing you can't not do, right? And I think that's the thing in publishing and finally publishers are recognizing, like, oh, maybe that's what we need to respond to, right? Is like, what needs to be said, that what's going to happen anyway, and how do we support it? Because otherwise it's like, I mean, everything else is really boring. I want to know what's touching everybody. So I think that's when I realized too, just waiting for somebody to translate Tagame, I just thought there must be so many other people who are having that same reaction to his work. And so, what's stopping us from, bringing it over? And, to be quite honest, I think it was a right time, right place, right person situation, because I'm somebody who was already translating Japanese to English, somebody who was already enjoying this work, and somebody who had the means to get in touch with him.
Right. So we're bringing up Gengoroh Tagame a lot, and I feel like for the audience, I think plenty of people probably still aren't familiar with his work. Could you kind of describe some of the markers of his style?
So he's been described a lot as like the Japanese Tom of Finland, and I don't think that's inaccurate. He's like one of the first commercially viable published gay erotic artists, and he's an illustrator, so he has done a lot of what I guess we'd call like pin-up illustrations of like sexualized men. But he's also the first Japanese artist to depict Japanese men as like hairy and big, and big. I mean,
I think something you'd said previously was breaking out of the twink mold.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think the audience in Japan, at least, had this moment of discovery with him, which was, oh, this is hot. Because I think there was this assumption it was just like a gender binary, and so if you were a receiver, you were also effeminate or feminized somehow. But there's nothing. I mean, there's a lot of brutality and a lot of subjugation, but there's nary a feminization of any body, even the female bodies in Tagame's work, right? So it is 100% just like butch. I don't know what else to call it. So that's his style. And he's known initially for having been the founding editor of a magazine called G-Men. And G actually stands for Gengoroh, so it's Gengoroh's Men. And
nice.
A really important magazine, not just because it was showcasing gay art and gay literature and gay culture, because there were actually several magazines that did that, but it just kind of challenged the depiction of masculinity. And this was, in a Japan, because I don't think even in the U.S. magazine culture was ever this robust, but these were publications that were the only means for gay men to find each other. So this is how a lot of people met and found out about like places, safe places to go, I'm really kind of sad that whole ecosystem is pretty much gone. Like G-Men has closed. All of the major gay magazines in Japan are either done or digital only. So
right.
And he's, oh my gosh, I should know this off the top of my head. He's probably written something like, I don't know, 50 or 60 full-length gay erotic graphic novels. And that in itself is an amazing feat. He's the only gay manga artist, I think, even today, who does this full-time and absolutely nothing else. Which is also something, right? I think even American cartoonists will understand the sort of how amazing that is, right? To support yourself on just comics.
And original works too, not just being a Twitter artist who
right,
has to
exactly. Like,
hawk off like furry porn commissions to make a living,
exactly, original work.
Your centering of masculinity is something that I had completely not considered as like a defining trait, specifically of like the pornography, or maybe I should be focusing in on the lack of feminization, because even if there is bondage, you're totally right that it is always a sort of masculine subjugation without diving into some of the other tropes that you'll see in. There are so many doujinshi and pieces of work that dive into feminization, or the whole funari genre, things that really have oftentimes in the concept of the trap, like really problematic boundaries relating to gender, and that's without even diving into kind of like Shotokan and strange age issues there. But to service such a market with these big, thick, chunky boys, like it's something where you're 100% right that there are no pretenders in this, because everybody that I've shown my brother's husband to, they either have a reaction to the art where they go, I don't know how I feel about the art. That's kind of it doesn't look good to me. I don't get how that's sexy. Or they have a response that goes like, holy shit.
Right.
Holy shit. Like, because if you know, you know.
Yeah.
But touching on this seminal work of My Brother's Husband, which became, I think, it won awards here in the West as it broke through, right?
It's won several. Oh my god, I'm drawing a complete blank. I feel terrible because I do consider each award an honor, but I can't remember.
It's just that you've won so many of them, man, I'm
it's
sure.
just my trophy shelf is falling over my head.
Well, to fill in, Monsieur Wikipedia informs me that it's won the Eisner Award for Best U.S. Edition of International Material, Japan Media Arts Award, and the Japan Cartoonists Association Award.
Yes. And a bunch of library awards, and it's really great. And I should just note for anybody who doesn't already know, this is an all ages book, so it's not gay porn. And I think that's kind of exciting too, that this is a person who's been able to add YA to his, toolbox. Like somebody who's done easily the most violent and most challenging, most, transgressive porn has also created one of the most heartwarming stories appropriate for all ages.
And the fact that he did this simultaneously too was amazing. I think there's a moment in Queer Japan where he talks about, like, I was co-creating My Brother's Husband along with, Space Tentacle Bondage Rope Adventure 97. And he said, I think doing so was really good for my mental health, to be able to balance out both sides of that.
Yeah.
And that was remarkable to me. And I think that is just a great slice of human nature there. But I think that I've brought up My Brother's Husband again and again on this because it's a piece of work I love so much. Can you kind of give the audience just a sense of what was it that drew you to this work and what it was about? This first work,
Well, the short of it is that as I continue to serve as his North American agent and his full-time translator. So it was just a matter of he was doing it, and I was like, I absolutely need to work on this. Like, if you do an English edition, I have to be in it. And, I want to just add that, like, Tagame and I at this point are like buddies. I mean, I think of him as almost just like, I don't know, like brother or uncle or something like that, And so it is very much me just being like, hey, I'm doing this, right? So there was no decision in that sense. But I think the bigger decision was, do we think we can get away with getting this published by a major publisher who won't touch our porn, which is what happened. So like Pantheon, which is an imprint of Knopf, which is part of Penguin Random House, like they don't do porn, but they did pick up My Brother's Husband. So that was really exciting. And I think as far as what drew me to it or what touches me about it, the most interesting aspect of the story, I actually think, isn't that it's about coming to terms with like gay identity I'm not going to say conservative, but in a culture that doesn't really quite understand what coming out culture is like, or living your full life or whatever. But it's actually the fact that the main character, the father, is a stay-at-home dad. Like, and I think that's really transgressive. Like a Japanese graphic novel manga about a dad who wears an apron all day and takes care of his daughter by himself. And it's the wife, the mother, who has left because she wanted to pursue a career. And they still get along. They're divorced, but they still get along really well. These are things that you do not see in family stories, right? Like, it's a very non-traditional household.
And so the broad, like, inciting incident of My Brother's Husband, could you give that to the audience of kind of like what the broad plot is about?
So the main character's twin brother, who left Japan when he came out because he didn't feel fully accepted, moved to Canada and married a guy named Mike, a white guy named Mike. The twin brother then dies, and then the widower Mike comes to Japan to pay his respects and meets the twin brother for the first time, Ishii, the father, and then it's this like tension between them as Yaishi's like, oh my god, what's this gay white man doing in my house? Like, I don't want anything to do with this. Also, I'm totally cool with the fact that my brother was gay, and then he realizes, oh wait, I guess I really wasn't, because we became estranged, and I don't really appreciate this dude. And then the daughter kind of sort of triangulates their relationship by being like, hey, we're family.
Yeah, and it's so heartwarming. This actually came up the first time because a repeat guest of ours is a actor friend of ours named Mike Flanagan, who is not a gigantic fuzzy bear like the Mike Flanagan of this novel. He's more like an otter, but his only hair is on his like mustache. Oh. So I think I've called him a naked mole rat in the past. But I pointed him in this direction after I. Have you seen the live action adaptation of this?
A little bit. I should. I've seen a little bit of it.
Well, it's very interesting because the guy who plays Mike Flanagan is like a 6'8" Estonian sumo wrestler.
Yes.
And it leads to this very strange thing where, even though he's like the perfect fit for this, and I actually thought it was like, watching this, I was having a really hard week. It made me so emotional that it like rebooted me and I felt alive again just watching it. I thought it was really well done. But it leads to scenes where it's like flashbacks with Ryoji and Mike Flanagan is there like on their wedding day and talking about things. And Ryoji is played by the same actor, plays both twin brothers. Really great Japanese actor who just speaks more fluent English than the giant Estonian wrestler does. And so there's moments where they're back in the West. They're like, whatever, we're in Canada now. And Ryoji's like, we need to go see my brother back in Japan. And Mike Flanagan's just like, yes, on the day of my wedding, we should go back and I will take you to Japan. I was like, oh, no. Hell yeah, this rocks. This rocks.
I didn't know that. Oh my God.
It's totally great. I don't think that a ton of Japanese audiences would like really nail that that's an issue what's happening there, but it's really funny.
Oh, poor Boruto. Oh.
Yeah, he's a politician now, though. He like ran for office in Estonia. He's like a sitting politician in Estonia.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, I hope. I don't know his politics, but I don't know.
Me too. But like, how can you be the lead in like an interracial gay like TV series? But I've known weirder people. Yeah, I know. I mean, there's Caitlyn Jenner is running for governor.
Like, well, let's not all kinfolk or whatever.
So we haven't done a ton of research, but pseudo shout out to Boruto, great sumo wrestler.
Good luck.
So I kind of want to move a little forward in your career. Can you tell us a bit about Massive Goods with you and Graham starting it? Because when I discovered it, I became furious that it seems like not everything is like currently in stock, because these are some really hot items available in Massive Goods. But what was kind of the spark in starting this, I guess, imprint or label or outfit with Graham?
So Graham and I were working on 2 books, and he's a filmmaker and I was in publishing, but both of us really knew, we're both also just like byproducts of, pop culture, right? And when we were preparing our book proposals, I think I was sort of like, I don't want to waste my time on this if it's not going to pay me correctly, or, like if it's not successful. So when Graham first approached me, he said he just wanted me to translate some interviews for a magazine, for Butt magazine actually. And I was like, that's definitely not going to be worth my time. They're definitely
not. Magazine, Anne?
What's that?
Did you say Butt magazine?
Mm-hmm. Butt, Butt magazine.
There's a Butt magazine?
What? You don't know Butt magazine? Come on.
No, what's Butt magazine?
Oh my Lord. But okay. Well, you're going to have to Google that while I tell this story.
I already am.
Butt magazine, dude.
In case you want to include it in the video, here is some Butt magazine.
Yeah.
My God.
Yes. So, I was like, this needs to be a little bit more lucrative than just, I'm going to work my tail off to translate an important interview for one magazine, right? So, we were going to TCAF, Toronto Comics Arts Festival, which, I miss it so much. And this was, I guess, in 2012 or 13. I said, let's debut the book, The Passion of Tagame, which we both worked on. with Chip Kid and Tagame, of course, out of Picture Box Books, R.I.P. And I asked the publisher Dan, I'm like, would you care if we brought merchandise to sell alongside the book? And so we designed this T-shirt, and that was the first thing we did, and it just flew off like hotcakes. And then suddenly everybody wanted one, and we were like, awesome! Like, there's a market for this, right? And I really credit Graham for designing really awesome T-shirts at that point.
Graham designed them?
Graham designed them, yeah. I mean, the artwork's obviously Tagame's, but Graham's the one who came up with the idea of like a full print from like a weird angle. Yeah. And we were like, the shirts are doing so well, it's definitely going to do better than the royalties on this book. And then we were like, let's do some more artwork and work with other artists. And then the best coupled sweatshirt happened, and that was the big change. So this is
that the two one guys facing each other?
Yeah, it's the two dudes facing each other like they're about to fuck or fight. You can't tell. Mm-hmm. And that was Jiraiya, the artist Jiraiya. And the prompt we gave him was just like, can you depict a massive gay couple? I think that's all we said. And then that's what he did. So we printed that. And at the time, Graham was working on the movie Her, the Spike Jonze film, as on the back end, not like, like some lowly Hollywood job for that. Actually, I think he was their blogger. Anyway, long story short, that was our introduction to opening ceremony, because they outfitted the movie, and they said, "Oh my God, this sweatshirt is dope. We want to carry it." And then it turned into, "This sweatshirt is so dope, we want to do a whole capsule collection." And then that capsule collection, we were told later, that capsule collection did better in sales that summer than anything they'd done before. And that it lifted sales overall in their stores. Like, it was just some like bananas statistic. Like, this is so popular, we need to do it again. And we did it, even though we're not fashion designers, and it did do really well. And in between the collections, we did other sort of one-off items. And each thing we were so delighted at how well it sold and how popular it was. And people really, it really spoke to people. It's so hard to produce clothing. I don't know why people do it. It's so fucking hard. So
sure, logistically.
Oh God, I mean, because if it's done well, it takes a long time, and even if it's not done that well, or even if it's done extraordinarily well, you're at the mercy of like factories in Asia, which
sure.
I have to say, it's like a lot less savory than you even think. Like, it's sort of like, I don't know if this should be $5. It should be like, and so we were like, we need to focus our production in the US. Like, I don't want to sound moralizing, but it just didn't feel good. So then it's
yeah, I think that's fine to say,
right? Like, it was sort of like, I don't know about these sweatshops. It's kind of, I don't know.
Do you think that Massive could be like due for a restock sometime in the future, or is this kind of like on pause right now?
I would love to get back into it, but it would honestly require somebody with the appetite for clothing production to focus their time on this, and it would be an investment. Like, I'm not about to payroll like a fashion line.
Right.
Graham and I went into this sort of we both went into it knowing the risks, and we assumed them personally, and so it was fine. But I don't know anybody right now who'd be like, yeah, I'm willing to put my life on hold and just do this, Right. I mean, it paid off for us, but that would be the risk somebody would have to take.
Totally. So if any of our listeners are into like streetwear, if you want to throw some money at Anne and Graham, get your hands in this. There's potential here. This is a fantastic label, and the capsule collection was absolutely fire. Check it out at Massive
dash
hyphen good
yeah.
dash or what massive-goods.com
Yeah.
and check it out because there's some fantastic stuff going on. And the amount of hats that you've worn now as executive director of the Asian Arts Institute in Philadelphia
Initiative.
and writer, translator, producer.
Yeah.
Or, sorry, did I
cool.
say that wrong?
It's totally cool because I'd love to be an institute, but we're the Asian Arts Initiative, and I only make that distinction.
Initiative. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, it's cool. It's just because it's the more natural sounding word after Asian Arts, but institute is like I don't know if there is an Asian Arts Institute. There must be, but just to make the distinction, because I think a lot of people think we appraise Asian art, which is what it sounds like we do, but that's not what it is. But yeah.
So talking about what you do and some of the shit. That it's so weird. I might cut this. This brings me back. Something you said during one of the presentations I was watching for pre-work was describing your work in translating some of Gengoroh Tagame's work and trying to take care of yourself while doing it. Something you said was it's really hard to eat food while and watch someone eat poo.
Yeah.
I think, which is like just struck a deep chord inside me. But so the Asian Arts Initiative, I know that you hold gallery exhibits and have different ways of working with youth, but what would you say is the main goal of the initiative, and how do you kind of put that into practice in Philly?
Our stated mission is to create community through the power of art. My mission is to see more brave art made by Asians in Philadelphia. So it is just right now, we're a site, we're a place, like most people know us as the big building in North Chinatown. And you'd come here to see like the Philly Asian American Film Festival or like various dance performances and the Philly Asian Performing Artists. And a lot of events take place here, whether we've designed and produced them or others. But I think for me coming in, it's really just like there's an entire narrative around Asians in America that kind of gets lost when you leave New York and Los Angeles and even San Francisco. But I actually really believe that the people who make commitments to work in spaces where you can only work, again, it goes back to like, what's the thing that you can't not do? But there's so many. You aren't in Philadelphia because you might not need to do it. You do it because you need to. Nobody here is not doing what they can't not do, if that makes sense. So I think this is one of the bravest spaces I've actually worked in, and I just want more. I just want more of you have to come here. I want, I think the Asian population here is something like 7%. I want it to be like 13% by the time I'm done.
Nice. Oh yeah, let's get those numbers up. Listeners, move to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Move to Philadelphia. You keep bringing this up. I guess the love of seeing somebody who is possessed by something that they must do, something that just takes them and drives them. I'm curious, do you feel like there is something for you that you must do, or is your infatuation with this something where it's almost like, well, I wish that there was one thing that I felt that drive about?
Both.
How do you feel like that manifests?
Oh my God. It's for me, the eternal, this is the conversation I have with my therapist every week. It's like, I think like a lot of generalists, I am a generalist. I wish I was a specialist. And like, I'm also trying to own that I'm good at being a generalist. But, I mentioned like in my childhood and in my younger days, I really thought it was music. And then just, when horrible things happen, you just put things away. But the writing to me now feels like the most important thing I have to be doing. If I'm not writing, I become really moribund and just, just dispossessed. And I think the challenge I'm a little bit older. So, as you get to an age where you have to start really settling in, it is sort of how do I define my success? And in my 20s and 30s, it was, I need to be published. And now it can't be that because it just can't. And now it has to be, I just have to have a practice of doing something. So as long as I'm writing, and honestly, I kind of like the fact that what I make is not particularly good. In the worse it is, it's sort of like, okay, now I have to get better at it. So, but I'm dying to be the person that is like, I've always wanted to be the person on the stage, and I've always wanted to be, the soloist or I wanted to be the thing. And I was actually just having this conversation with a colleague, but a lot of the work that we do, and I mean labor, is to survive, right? And a lot of the work that we do as people of color is passing to survive. It's just, what do I get away with, and how do I get to the place where I can be my most sincere and unapologetic self, but also not get killed or not get ostracized or not be exoticized, right? And at this point, I feel like I've been passing as a leader and a public figure, which feel like really important jobs, but actually that's also taking away from my real desire, which is not to lead, but to create, right? So I'm giving you a really esoteric answer, but I guess it's sort of that you just kind of hit something that's really big for me, which is how do I do myself justice as a creator, and then also just own the fact that I happen to be really fucking good at my job, and the job that I'm really good at is leading and organizing and like all this administrative boring work.
Right. Oh man, you're hitting on so many
fucking
important
good at
things
that.
here. Yeah. So balancing this desire to have eyes on you or to be the soloist, are you expressing that you feel? Gosh, I'm sorry. This is just something I've grappled with a lot as well. So, going to a theater school, actually.
I bet you must have felt that, but in spades. I mean,
so it's complicated. I went to SUNY Fredonia, which is like it's like the in terms of like if you want to go to a state SUNY school for theater, it's like the best among them.
Yeah.
But I was a triple major in acting, English, and women's and gender studies. So I was busting my buns there. And a question I was constantly presented with is, doing all of these different things, what when I'm doing it makes me feel like I'm my truest self? Because you used the word pretending a little while ago. And I think so much of, especially now that you're the executive director of a like influential arts initiative in the fifth largest city in the country, right? Like that's a huge position of power, but still having this sense of, I won't, put words in your mouth and call it any type of like imposter syndrome, but the sense that maybe what you are best at doing is not what feels most like naturally nurturing or aligned with your interest. Do you have any lessons for me for how you've like grappled with that, or is it still a process of trying to figure out, what's working best for you?
I'm gonna poorly paraphrase and quote Alexander Chee, the writer, who talks. He has this really beautiful piece about writer's block and why writers prevent themselves from succeeding or writing or whatever success is, right? And the question he asks is, who are you afraid of letting down? And so that's the question I'm always asking myself. Who am I afraid of letting down? And I think that's why I know if I can't not write. I know that about myself, so I just do it. Even if it feels like, and I think the one sort of life hack I have is just to turn what you're doing into the thing that you have to do. So if I am working like my business admin work, I call it writing. And that's how I hack my brain into, now I'm writing, right? So like, I have to write acknowledgments to donors. I write poetry. I'm not writing, hi, thanks for giving us $100. Like I turn it into a writing project. Or like,
that's great.
If I'm giving State of the Union talk with my staff about like the world or whatever, like I turn that into a speech and I write it. If I'm giving a board presentation, I think of it as like I'm on a stage and this is my soliloquy, right? And I hack each of those things, even if it's like, I mean, the farthest thing from that context is probably like working in a spreadsheet. But even there, I'm like, what's my narrative? It's concrete poetry.
That's really,
and even I think
that's a really gorgeous way of approaching that.
I mean, in a manner of speaking, like you are a nonfiction voice actor at this point as a podcaster, right? So it's still theater. This is absolutely theater.
No, you're very right. You're very right.
I mean, I think, and then I think of all the people who succeed at certain avenues, and then where I get really jealous is for the person who actually can decide, like, I'm just going to be 110% at this one really specific manifestation of my work. I continue to put I continue to pour water into multiple buckets just to make sure I have multiple buckets, not really having the courage to put all of it into one. So that's my problem. But I just that's the sort of mental hack.
I really love that. I think that's extremely valuable, and something that a few of because we have listeners who are aspiring voice actors, aspiring writers who will reach out knowing that we both worked in voice, on stage, on film, that I've served as like a screenplay consultant, and I'll have people reach out being like, at what point can I say I'm a writer? At what point can I say that I'm a poet? And a consistent thing that people trip over is the sense that you're some type of artistic quantum particle where you're only valid if you're observed. Otherwise, it's like your art might as well not exist. But you and I'm sorry, I feel like Nardwar that I'm whipping out things you tweeted less than 12 hours ago. But you talked about nuking your Tumblr account. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm at work and I'm like, what am I going to ask Anne? What are we going to talk about? And it's what I did. Talked about feeling almost like you were reinventing the letter.
Yes.
Through personal writing that maybe you shared with a few close friends, but maybe not at all as well. So feeling valid as an artist and a writer, do you have anything that you would share with like the young aspiring writers in the audience about how to relate with their own work, how to write for the sake of writing or discovering themselves versus I need this to get published? Because, oh my God, if there's one thing that ruins young poets, it's the 40 rejection letters from getting, things, just no. So
I'm going to quote another person. A friend recently said something I don't think he realized how important it was for me to hear this. He's like, I think it's really important you learn to be comfortable playing by yourself. Isn't that funny? Like, it's just,
it is insightful.
It was specific to, I was just like playing drums in the studio, and he's like, I think, you need to become comfortable with playing by yourself. And I was like, oh my God, but that's it.
Yeah.
So, imagine, I mean, the bigger challenge is what does it sound like if you are actually content with it not being recorded or not being documented, just what does that sound like? And I think I'm not denying the need for attention and for an audience, because that's something I thrive on. And, and so this is really hard and maybe a contradiction, but I think the way to get to a place where you can actually successfully achieve an audience is to first become okay with not needing it, right? Like it happens when you don't want it. Like people say that all the time, right? And I think that's something like where I'm approaching now, where some of my best writing, to be quite honest, are one-directional, unique pieces, like letters. The letters I write to my friends and to past lovers and whatnot. It's like that was prime Anne. So can you be okay with that? And I don't know what the equivalent would be for voice acting or other modes, other disciplines. But like I had a friend recently share with me something I wrote her, and it blew my mind. I mean, not to sound narcissistic, but I was like, I wrote that? I could not believe what I was seeing. And she's like, this was on my refrigerator for the longest time, because it was just like,
wow.
And again, not to sound arrogant, but I did see it and think, okay, then that's worth it. Oh my God, that's totally worth it. And I still get sad that I'm probably not going to become the next great American novelist. I also have gotten rejection letters. It doesn't feel good. And, like the compromise for me, I think, is just deciding it's okay to not be cool with rejection.
Yes, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely it is.
Because
Yeah.
like so many authors are like, you have to keep sending proposals, you have to keep trying. And I got 50 rejections before I was published. It's like, good for you, but you know what?
Great.
I cannot.
Congratulations, Dobby, just whipping yourself. Just like,
yeah. I don't have that. Whatever that is, I don't have it. Like, you know, give me a captive audience. Give me a really good friend. Somebody who's going to be really cool about the thing I'm going to send them.
For sure. And you just described one of the most common artistic experiences, which is interpreting the slightest bit of like self-pride or confidence as arrogance. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something where I'm curious about your to share a little background on this. It happens a lot with theater and music, especially, where if you were at a restaurant and you're complimenting the chef on the meal, or you're giving thanks to your financial advisor or an accountant for a job well done, these are all things where like you express praise and the person will take the praise and be like, yes, I know I am worth my thing. And yet, especially going to an art school, there is just a sense of, if you greet somebody after a play that they did, shake their hand and say like, wow, that was a great job, that was an amazing performance. If their response was, I know, right? I'm fucking great. I fucking rock that shit. There's oftentimes a little like almost string that pulls inside of you. It's like, no, that's not humble. That feels bad. And so the constant self-effacing thing that we need to do as artists of talking ourselves down to feel like our art is valid. You working with young artists, is this ever something that you run into, of people being afraid to kind of value their work properly?
I read something about narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder, and it was a really interesting take, which is young people are described as narcissistic, but when you look really closely at the studies as to why they're described that way, it's because in surveys comparing like older people and older generations and younger generations, younger people, when asked what their self-regard is or how they feel about themselves, they say, okay, I feel okay about myself. I feel good I think I'm doing okay. That's the rubric of narcissism, is I think I'm doing okay. That's the fucking rubric.
Oh my God, you're so right.
Like, so the standard of narcissism, falling below the threshold, it requires being like, it could be better, I could be doing more, is supposedly the standard. Yeah. And so narcissism is, I think I'm fine. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So, and I'm, I don't want to be quoted in any medical papers. You should go look this up so I get it right. But that data just blew my mind, because I think you're totally right. There's a little string in your heart that's like, no, you should be humble, but
yeah.
I'm also trying to learn to accept, like, maybe if I'm being paid a compliment and I agree, rather than to be like, yeah, I am good, I can just be like, I can describe what feeling good feels like. So instead of being like, you're right, I just killed that, it's like, like if I do something good or I write something well, I can just be like, yeah, my energy level is really high right now. Or like, I'm really giddy. Like, this is making me really giddy. Like that, and that feels a little bit more, that's a compromise for me.
Absolutely. And even though we weren't able to find that book specifically, something that I needed to make sure that we touched on before we wrapped up is, there are so many underserved books and artists out there. So if we're entering the eyeball zone, the Anne Ishii eyeball zone of put your eyeballs on this, support this, get your not your fingers, ears, whatever, go find this art. What is it that you are reading, consuming, supporting that you need to let people know is out there right now?
Oh, that's such a hard one. Okay, so for starters, all of us need to continue to consume queer art. I think especially queer erotica always needs the support. And I don't, again, it suffers no pretender. So, I'm not asking you to read things that don't titillate you or don't speak to you. But that canon needs to be canonized, and it won't be canonized if we aren't reading it. And then as far as like understanding how to translate, passion into self-acceptance, and I mentioned Alexander Chee, but like the autobiography of a novel, I think is his book. That's a good one. And The Gift by the author's name escapes me, even though I've read the book so many times. That's a good one to sort of understand the power of creative contribution. But as far as what's important, I mean, honestly, like, I still really believe, I hope that in my life I'm able to just like bring out more iterations of work that have not had their proper respect or due. And like, it's still astonishing to me that it took me to get gay manga on the American radar.
Right, because
not single-handedly.
It was Anne. No, it was Anne Ishii, y'all. Like, Anne is a pioneer.
I mean, I didn't do it single-handedly, but the fact that it took a me to do that is like, that's very humbling. I'm like, wow, I cannot believe that we did this. So, I want more people to do that. And each time I'm presented with something new that shouldn't have been new to me, I'm like, damn, why didn't I know about this sooner, y'all? Like, so, like, I love that feeling, but also I hope more people make it happen so it's less like, and of course now I'm also drawing a complete blank on examples of like overlooked movements in art and literature, but
no, I totally got you. So the two ways to take that emotion of it took me to do it are, and they're both equally valid, is it took me, Anne Ishii, brilliant, effervescent goddess, dope writer, amazing intellectual and scholar, to do this, and that is amazing, and I have accomplished this and changed so many, I mean, like, directly improved my life, someone that you had never met or heard from or of at all until like 2 weeks ago. Who was so directly benefited by that work and that, burgeoning kind of desire to share those things. And so thank you so much directly, Anne. And then the other side of it, which can be equally as valid, is it took me, a queer millennial trash folk, a raccoon in a human suit, someone who has no idea what they're doing, constantly stumbling through life, someone where even now I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, what am I looking at? Took me, and even I was able to change the world for the better in this way. Even I was able to do this. So for the people who are like just starting right now, if you were able to hand the cheat codes to the young Zoomers who are looking up from TikTok and they're looking up and they're like, oh gosh, wait, there's something I want to share with the world. If you could hand the cheat codes, the things that you wish you knew, to people who wanted to get involved in, say, translating or producing, what's the advice you'd give for the young people with those aspirations?
My immediate thought was, don't be afraid to reach out to people. You'd be surprised. Like, I'm always surprised at the kindness of others, and people always want to collaborate. But I say that as a pathological extrovert. I'll talk to fucking
It's just so insane to me that you're saying this, because that was how I felt about when I got an email back from Anne Ishii. It was like, y'all, I got an email back from Anne Ishii. People are so good. I can't believe what happens if you reach out.
Oh, and then that's the other side of it. Don't be afraid to respond. Like, I think, so often, I'm sure 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I was much more stuck up and been like, whatever. I have an example. So I went to Milan in 2008 on a job, and it was a really weird trip. I was a little bit on my own. I had a night by myself in Milan, and I was like, you know what, fuck it. This is my YOLO night. I'm going to go to the fanciest restaurant I can afford by myself and just like get drunk and whatever. We'll see what happens. I'll try to look for, like, I don't know. I was planning to burn a candle at both ends, and I did. And I went to this restaurant, and there was this like really boisterous Italian group. Of course, they were Italian. There was like a boisterous group of
Brotakus, the anti-Italian podcast. Put it on the map. Boom. Get out of here.
Fuck France. I'm in Italy now. And they kind of saw me eating by myself, but like way too much food for one person, and they were like, "What's going on?" And they were like, "What are you eating?" And I'm like, it looks like risotto and branzino, and I was trying to speak Italian, and they were like, "That's really funny. You're funny." And I was like, "What are you guys doing?" And so they invited me to eat with them. very long story short, I am now out on the town with these complete strangers until literally dawn. Like, we are out all night. And it's like it's 2 men and a woman and then me. And, anyway, one of the men was like desperately trying to fuck me, right? And so the whole night is just like, we're dancing, and I'm like, I want to stay out all night, but I just don't want to go through, like, I don't want to catch anything. So
I don't want him to go through me. I don't want this. Like,
yeah. So I sort of did everything else that I could, and I just had a fucking blast. When I got back and people were like, I was telling this story, they were like, what? You weren't scared? Like, what? And like, he was trying to fuck you? Like, what? And I was like, I would have been more upset if he didn't try to fuck me.
God damn it!
You know what I mean? Like, if I did all of that and none of them wanted to do anything with me, I would have been like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, and so I'm not a libertine. I'm really, really not. But like, so they're like, how, you weren't scared of strangers? You just said yes. I'm like, always say yes. I mean, with reason. If you're a recovering drug addict, maybe say no. But
no, I'm you're hitting on something really important here, which I kind of butt up with as someone who is like I graduated from college 2 years ago. I'm 26, and incoming from there, I was coming in through the gender studies program in like the era of consent and safe spaces and things that all have like really important value. And yet there definitely was a kind of like through line of some of the folks I graduated with where I met some of the best poets and writers that I to this day have known in my life in school, people who now are unemployed because they would never even consider like raising their hand, to share something in class, or they would never consider sending back, a email to someone or putting a bunch of things out there like you did, to actually start the translation with Gengoroh Tagame. I think I just mispronounced that name.
No, I didn't hear it, but I mean, that's the thing, is that's why I was pausing before saying all of this. It's such a different age now, and I really don't know how to. I don't know how to speak to this age. It's really, really hard, because one of my biggest learning curves here has been how to work around introversion and trauma and like really, really deep anxieties, and I'm a toucher, like not gross touch, but just like
that's a great,
and I can't, totally, and ask my staff will tell you I'm not inappropriate in that way, not in that way, but
right.
I don't know. I wish I knew. That's something I'm learning. I wish I had like I just want to give everybody like a little boba tea who feels like they can't come out and raise their hand and say things and assure them that there's another way. There are other ways, actually. I just realized, I mean, most people I talk to, I guess it's sort of just text or email, and if you can't do that, then find an advocate. I don't know. It's really hard. I don't know how to socialize without being ready to take it all.
No, and you're exactly exhibiting some of the issues, which is that like knowing that if we were to directly say like, go out there, take risks, be unabashedly, out there and afraid, people could correctly, clap back on Twitter talking about, even now I'm so crippled about mentioning examples for fear of cancellation.
I'll give you one. So I get this too, and I realize that I'm speaking from a place of tremendous privilege. Privilege. I walk into most spaces. You know what I mean? Like, I don't ask for permission, and
sure.
It's sort of, I'm here. I totally recognize the privilege in that, and I understand the paralyzing fear of being somebody, exposed to danger and abuse and with histories of trauma. But here's the thing. I've also been the victim of abuse and trauma. Actually, pretty shitty shit. And it's the way I've also hacked that mentally is, and I can't even describe it. It's so awful, and not to like outdo anybody, but in my mind, I try to tell myself that has happened, and that's why I can't keep letting that happen. Like, does that make sense? Like, I was in a really gnarly car accident, and after that accident, I was like, well, now I can drive any irresponsible, unsafe car I want, because I've been through the big accident.
Interesting.
So in my lifetime, I want to make sure that I'm not more safe. I might be stupid. I just realized, like, a smart person would be in a car accident and be like, I want to wear my safety belt for the rest of my life. But I'm like, no, I had a concussion and broke my leg in 2 places. So I'm going to just ride motorcycles.
I'm going to live forever. Yeah. I'll drive whatever, man.
I've been through the big thing, you know? I don't know. I think I might be stupid. Don't listen to me.
I think, well, so Anne can say that, but, you know, out of fear of narcissism, I will say, do listen to Anne, because there comes a point where, especially for artists, when so much art comes from trauma and comes from pain and comes from being turned down, where at a certain point you need to ask yourself whether you would rather be protected or whether you would rather be resilient. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard, because the deeper you get into art, the more you get a kind of all-consuming sense that this is really, really deeply, the world is really deeply fucked up, and it's very painful. And there's a lot of terrible things that can happen, but taking those risks and putting yourself out there at a certain point, if you're very disinterested in doing that, then I think maybe that's why you have brought up so correctly the all-consuming urge, the possession, the thing that makes you take all of those risks, because maybe that is the thing that gets you to that level, the thing of like, whatever, I'm going to lay it all on the line to get there. Yeah. You know, even if it's scary, even if it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah. Gosh. I mean, the fear is always going to be there. And I think that's the other thing. I talk about this a lot with artist friends, is fear's the real enemy. I know that sounds so cheesy, but like that's one thing artists hopefully can manage. And that's maybe on the privilege of not having to actually be in life-threatening places, right? Like, so from the safety of your thoughts, hopefully they're safe thoughts. I mean, and if your thoughts are dangerous, then that's another issue. You want to try to, your service to society is maybe to combat the fear.
Ooh, I think that's a beautiful sentiment, and I think that actually caps off a lot of what we're trying to reach here today. Thinking about how you could best serve society in that way. Gosh, man, so much wisdom from you, Anne. You've been so generous with your time today, Anne, and I want to make sure that I allow you to enjoy your weekend. But before we go, for people who want to support your work, whether that's Substack or the initiative, where can we find you, and how can people help support the work that you're doing day to day?
More important than what I'm doing, for sure, because I'm of means, I'm fine. But you can follow me on social media if you want to hear more ridiculousness. And then that's at @ill_iterate, kind of everywhere. And then Asian Arts Initiative, please consider checking us out, coming to Philadelphia, at me, pretty, as you said, receptive. So, absolutely. Proof is right here. AsianArtsInitiative.org, Asian Arts Philly on social media. Just check us out.
All right. Fantastic. Anne, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being so open with sharing and speaking on some pretty complicated topics, touching on everything from learning French to the debauched tentacle pornography in Men in Black 2 to how to find your spark and truest self as an artist. I think that you've given so many beautiful ideas out here, and so I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. This is so much fun.
Absolutely. So here we go with the outro, gang. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like what you heard, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or review us on your favorite podcasting app. It really does make a difference, and every review counts. We will make sure to give you a shout out on the air to show our appreciation. Make sure you check us out on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram, on OnlyFans coming up. Just check us out. We're working on it.
We got the mics.
But we got the oh god. I love Anne Ishii, gang. All right, so with that said, I am Pax, and this is Brotakus. See y'all next week. Bye, y'all.